it's where your feet, you may have to separate your feet a little bit. What's your feeling on that?
Back in the mini wedge. So 25 yards and in, right? Once we get to that toss, that's basically where I tell people 6 to 8 inches is your maximum width of your stance. And then as you get into mini wedge, I mean, that's where it's going to be more of a, there's going to be more of your transfer and your weight transfer. So that's where you're going to start to widen out incrementally, you know. And it's different for different people. But I definitely, I mean, if this is my full wedge stance, you know, kind of right here, if I'm hitting a 3/4 wedge, you know, I'm going to bring it in a couple inches, and then I'm going to just keep going, you know, to where even a 1/4 wedge might be like that. So I'm just teaching people to incrementally narrow as I'm trying to tighten, right, the pivot points. And I'm winding it out when I want there to be more shift, you know, and therefore more lag.
They asked that question because Ben Crane uses the same type of sequence stuff. They asked him at the World Golf Fitness Summit that question, and he said 40 yards. So anything inside 40 yards, he uses the fundamentals that you're talking about with the sequence.
Really?
With starting with the club,
Huh.
and then anything over 40 yards, it goes back to weight transfer.
Yeah, and I guess that would pretty much fit into the model that we just. I mean, I was kind of 25-30, but I mean that's great. It's good. It's good to hear.
Now, just to clarify, you're still emphasizing a forward swing bottom, even if you're making impact with no lag.
Yes. Yeah. Are you saying that? Yeah. I mean, if I'm hitting, you know, like a really shallow high shot, right, and I'm wanting to come into the golf ball, like I would consider. I mean, no lag. I don't know. Is there any lag? I don't think so. I don't think there's any kind of down cocking. Lag to me is when you increase the angle. You know, that if I start here, if I increase that angle, that to me is lag, right? So if I maintain that angle and I'm getting rid of it the whole time, then I'm not increasing lag. But I can still be, the club can still be descending through the bottom. Was that your, I answered that right?
Well, that's where I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that, because at some point that arm's going to straighten out, and so same with the club. Now, if it's going to straighten out and have no lag at all, right at impact, then where's the bottom of the swing? Isn't it right underneath the ball or right at the point of contact with the ball?
Let's look. Let's do a high toss.
Hit the light there, Mark.
Okay, would you say that's straight?
I'd say right now okay. So I've seen a little bit of the shaft leaning back.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's
into the sternum, right? It's pointing at the sternum, so it can't be straight with the lead shoulder, which is the point at which the club is going to be at the very bottom of its swing when it's aligned with the lead shoulder.
I don't. In the short game, I don't agree with that.
No. Okay.
Because I think that the bottom is in the short game. I think it's where the sternum is, because I don't think there's a transfer of weight. You know, obviously in the full swing, I want the bottom to be up here,
Okay.
right? Because there is lag.
Okay,
But if there isn't lag, right, the bottom's going to be back here. But let's go to low toss real quick. Let's look at low toss. So that's impact for the high toss.
So it's continuing past that point of impact.
But let's look at this, all right? Now, I don't consider that lag. I just consider that forward shaft lean.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a 60-degree wedge. And, you know, take it to right about there, Steve.
Sure.
Okay?
And that's because the ball's back. Yeah.
The ball's back, right? So if my center's here, the ball's behind the center, that's creating the forward shaft lean. But I'm not creating more lag, right? And so then let's go forward on this one. Right, so obviously the shaft's leaning back because, like I said, I have control. I mean, I hit that shot exactly the way I wanted to hit it. I didn't blade it whatsoever. But the bottom was right, my body was right here, so the club bottomed out just after the golf ball was struck, and then it folds up, right? So that's how I'm adding a lot of loft to it. So does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now it's making more sense.
Okay.
So, James Seekman is a guy that I've spent a little bit of time with, and what he does is wherever you set up, whether it be the low shot, the high shot, if you mark the shaft line, if you're releasing it with the right sequence, it will be exactly the setup 1 inch in front of the ball. So that if you look at those, pretty much if you look at setup,
Yeah.
okay, where he was, if you go to setup, if you can
Which
put
is right
him,
where that line is, right?
that angle will be 1 inch in front of the ball if you're releasing it correctly. Right there,
Yeah.
basically. And it doesn't matter if it's a low shot or a high shot, then it tells you whether or not you're getting in the right release, if you're creating lag or you're casting it too much.
I really like that. I think that's great, right? It was interesting too, because I had a guy.
And you can do that now with high-speed cameras.
Yeah. And yeah, you look at that, right? That's great. So, I had a guy who was interesting. He's like, you have to have the shaft forward to hit low shots. And so he was one of these guys, right? And I'm like, well, your right shoulder's too low. He goes, well, you got to have it. He went to a school. I'm not going to mention where he went. But he's like this. And so I took a video of him, and I put a line on his shaft at address, right? And it was like 15 degrees forward. And at impact, it was 5. So I told him, I said, you think your shaft is leaning forward, you're casting the golf club because you're losing angle the closer you get to the golf ball, right? And I think what you just said is perfect, that there should be just a little more of this prior to impact, which would tell you the bottom of the golf swing is post-impact. So I think I like hearing that. I learned something good. Okay, let's do one other thing, and then let's go through some putting. Someone raise their hand? Sorry.
I have a question. How do you teach your students to control their distance? Say they want to hit a 50-yard to a 70-yard shot. Do you just longer backswing, or do you have them move their hands up and down?
Again, I try to make things as simple as possible, right? If I'm tossing the ball to you, right, what am I going to do? Shorten the length that my arm swings. If I want to toss a ball further, I'm going to lengthen it. I think by far, like especially as you get into toss shots, most people are low to high, and I'd rather have them high to low. I want them to get their, and I teach this in putting too, in lag putting. I'd rather have people long to short than short to long. I always tell them, get your power from the distance you go back. You look at really good players around the green, and you see a lot more players that do this, right? And you see many more amateurs that do that. And their follow-through's a lot further than the backswing. So I'm always trying to I'll teach them to balance, but if they err, I'd rather have them get more energy from the backswing than the follow-through.
Is there any situation where you'd have your player move their hands on the grip shorter?
Yeah, we tell people in mini wedge play to grip down a little bit on the club, to get a little closer to the golf ball. But mini wedge play is more simulating more of the full swing, and I want the shaft to the club to feel the same as it would in the full swing. Then as we get closer, like in the toss shot, I'll let people get down in the shaft so that they can get closer to the golf ball. As they get closer to the golf ball, that would allow the club to swing back naturally straighter. The further they stand from the golf ball, the more they're going to incur rotation and get the club deeper and incur more power. So yeah, I absolutely will allow people to get down in the club. And the bunker I don't, because I want them to have the lever. I want them to use the full wedge so that they can create the lever which they need, in the bunker.
What do you suggest for students, and maybe more of the advanced students, that we get a lie in Southern Cal where you're hitting just before the green, you've got a tight lie, you're into the green with Bermuda, and you get a tight lie. Your normal tendency is let's hit it low, but then it's really easy to dig in when you're against the grain.
Yeah, I'm big on pretty much everybody I teach. If they're a consistent student, when they have a minimum of 58 degrees in their bag. And so I like 58 or 60 because probably my favorite shot to teach people is take an L wedge, even a 62-degree L wedge, where they can afford to have the shaft leaning forward a little bit, right? And then you can teach them to have kind of a non-wrist, very shallow motion, where the club, they're really using the sole of the golf club without angle so it doesn't get caught in the situation. So the more loft you have, then you can afford a little more forward lean, come at it shallow, and that's the shot that's going to come out low with some spin. So that's how I'll teach them that shot. It's good. One more thing I want to show you guys. Let's do down the line, low toss, high toss. All right, take back and stop. All right, so there's down the line, low toss, high toss. So if I lean the shaft forward, this fits with the setup. If I lean the shaft forward to hit that low toss shot, right, well, I'll teach people from there, if they're hitting a low toss, to keep the toe down or keep the face toward the ball, whatever terminology you want to use, but I don't want them to rotate the toe up. I want to keep the toe down. And so naturally, if the shaft is forward, the toe is down, the club comes inside more. So it's an inside, kind of an inside-out movement with the club slightly closed, right? So that would be low toss. And you can see what the wrist action is doing. The wrist action is more of a bowed, where the right wrist is here, right? And then the high toss, I need loft at this point, so I'm going to keep the club head outside of my hands and rotate the toe up, which is going to be more of a cupping action with the left wrist. And so at that point, I can swing the club down and deliver the club with loft. And so what I try to explain to people is open only works when the club head's outside of your hands, and closed only works when the club is a little behind your hands or more to the inside, and you can't mix those two variables. So if you get someone taking the club inside and open, they're in trouble. And if you get someone taking the club outside and club shut, they're in trouble. So, and you see a lot of people that don't understand how to control the loft of the face and the backswing. And so if you've got a player who's trying to hit it high, and he does this, he's forcing himself to go back and add loft in the forward swing. So if you can get him to rotate the toe up and keep it outside of their hands, he's in a position where he can throw the club at the ball because he's got the loft that he needs to elevate the golf ball. So I would say in and close go together, and out and open go together. And so once you're set up, that's what you have to learn, or that's what I'll teach people to control their trajectory, as far as, hitting the shot that you want to hit. The downswing is always the same. The downswing is throw the club at the ball, match it up, and pivot through. Whether I'm hitting a low shot, right, or a high shot, it's the same sequencing in the downswing. So there you kind of have the high and low toss. And there we go. Right? Questions? Is that right? You guys want to go do some putting?
Yeah.
Great. Let's go.